Electrolysis versus laser hair removal. Let's get into it. Shaving, plucking, waxing, chemical depilatory creams, these get old. They're time intensive, they're often irritating, and depending on your hair type and the location, can lead you down the path of developing those pesky, painful, ingrown hairs, which can lead to stubborn hyperpigmentation, scarring, and skin infections. So you may be seeking a method to permanently reduce hair growth and to cut down on the need for these time-intensive hair removal approaches. There are two established evidence-based ways to permanently remove hair, to permanently reduce hair growth: electrolysis and laser hair removal. In this video, I'm going to talk about how exactly these two techniques differ. I'm going to explain the pros and cons of each one. What the heck is electrolysis anyway? Electrolysis has been around for a very long time. It is a technique that involves taking a fine needle and inserting it down into the hair follicle and delivering electrical energy to destroy the hair bulb and get rid of the hair growth to that one hair. There are actually three modalities of electrolysis. Number one is galvanic. Galvanic is interesting in that it delivers the current down there into the follicle and basically causes a chemical reaction. It causes the salt water that is in the hair follicle to convert to sodium hydroxide, which is very caustic and essentially destroys the hair. You also have thermolysis. This is a modality that uses a high frequency alternating electrical current. It targets the follicle, and the high frequency causes the cells that make up the hair bulb to vibrate, and that vibrational energy leads to the generation of heat that essentially destroys the bulb. Then you have the blended method, which, as the name implies, involves a blend of both galvanic and thermolysis. Unfortunately, there are no randomized controlled trials, clinical trials comparing the different modes of electrolysis, so we don't know which one would necessarily be better. What about laser hair removal then? What exactly is laser hair removal? Laser hair removal actually involves the delivery of specific wavelengths of light that target the pigment melanin in pigmented hairs. So in contrast to electrolysis, where you're delivering electrical energy to destroy the hair bulb, in this case, you are delivering light energy, which targets the pigment melanin in the hairs. Now, one thing about laser hair removal, in contrast to electrolysis, that bears mention is the fact that because it targets the pigment melanin, it tends to often work best on hairs that are darkly pigmented. And because it needs some contrast, so as to specifically target the hair follicles, it often works best on people who have a paler skin type and dark hairs, whereas the risks with laser hair removal become much greater when you have a deeper skin tone and dark hair, because it can't distinguish between heating up your skin and heating up the hair follicle. That being said, we have many new and advanced lasers these days that actually are capable of safely treating people of deeper skin tones. Laser hair removal is not necessarily always super effective for really light hairs, however. Blonde hair, those little peach fuzz vellus hairs, those can be tricky to target with laser hair removal. On the flip side, however, with the electrolysis can be safely used on any skin tone, and it can be effective for any type of hair: dark, blonde, red, vellus, terminal, because it's not relying on that pigment melanin. It's just relying on the skill of the operator to effectively get that little needle down on the follicle and zap the hair bulb. Do they work, and does one work better than the other? They do work. They are established for permanent hair reduction. With laser hair removal, you can appreciate reduction in hair almost immediately. Usually after the first treatment, you can appreciate 10 to 25% reduction in hair. Laser hair removal typically requires 6 to 8 treatments to achieve the desired outcome. Electrolysis is also an established way to permanently reduce hair growth, and it is estimated that with electrolysis, one can get about 25% reduction of the treated hair. In contrast to laser hair removal, electrolysis is very, very time intensive. It requires multiple sessions. With laser hair removal, you're going across the area, and so it can go pretty quickly. Electrolysis relies on delivery to each individual hair, and it can take some time to heat up and deliver that energy. So it's very time intensive. Now notice I'm saying can lead to permanent hair reduction, because I think a lot of people approach either of these modalities with the mindset that it's going to completely eliminate all hair, they're going to be bald, smooth, and they are never, ever, ever going to have to remove hair. And that is really just not the case with either of these approaches. The treatments are only going to be as effective as they are at targeting the hairs. Hairs are in different stages of the growing cycle. So depending on where that hair follicle is in the growing phase of the cycle can influence to what extent it responds and you get reduction. So while you can expect a reduction in overall hair growth, hair density, and a decreased need to remove the hair with means like shaving, plucking, or whatever it was that you were trying to get away from, don't assume that you will never, ever, ever have to use those again. You can have an effective laser hair removal or effective electrolysis, yet later on down the road, you will likely at some point need to remove the hair again. Now, it's not going to be as dense because those hair follicles have been effectively targeted, but you're going to we're mammals, we're covered in hair. So keep that in mind. What are the risks with each of these? The major risks that you need to be aware of with laser hair removal is that it can lead to discoloration, hyperpigmentation, or hypopigmentation. The risk of this is dependent on the operator, the settings. So not as common with a dermatologist who does this on a regular basis. However, I want to make a note here that you need to be hyper aware of, especially if you have a deeper skin tone. We're talking about laser hair removal here. You also have intense pulse light. Slight little nuance there in the language. Intense pulse light can be effective, like laser hair removal. In contrast to laser hair removal, it's not a laser though. It's a variety of different wavelengths of light. This is something that you often can get in a med spa, and if done on people with deeper skin tones, especially with certain settings, can really, really burn you and lead to horrific, stubborn hyperpigmentation. So I want you to be aware of that, regardless of your skin type, but it's especially risky in people with deeper skin tones. And we do see a lot of patients coming in having gone to some med spa and had IPL for hair removal by someone who was not skilled, didn't have the knowledge base with regards to treating patients of deeper skin tones, and burn them. So be really cautious in that regard. Rarely you can have scarring, burning. Again, the burning, it's possible to burn the skin, but someone, a board certified dermatologist is going to have the expertise to not burn you. Again, it's all dependent on the settings. There's a risk of blistering, very, very uncommon when done by a professional. If you're someone who gets cold sores, laser hair removal on the face could potentially trigger a cold sore, so your dermatologist might prescribe you an antiviral medicine to reduce the risk that that happens at the time of the procedure. With laser hair removal, there is one very, very rare, unusual side effect that bears mention. I have only seen one case of this. It does happen, it's super rare. It's called paradoxical hypertrichosis. Basically, for whatever reason, for some people, laser hair removal seems to trigger excessive hair growth in the adjacent skin. And why this happens is not clear. Hypertrichosis, that new hair growth can be effectively treated with laser hair removal, but it does happen sometimes. Electrolysis, what are the risks of electrolysis? Electrolysis, you run the risk of infections. If not done by someone who has the best technique, maybe the cleanliness standards of wherever you are going to get this are not the best, could potentially put you at risk for an infection because the needles, they are going down into the follicle, the needles are not properly cleaned, there is a risk of introducing viruses into the skin, bacteria, all sorts of things. Shouldn't be, not a common occurrence. I've never seen anybody come in with a skin infection from electrolysis, but has been reported in the medical literature. Scarring is also a risk. If you are prone to keloids, I would exercise caution with electrolysis because patients can have keloids as a result. The risks of electrolysis become more of an issue if the follicle is damaged. So remember, they're inserting a needle down to target the root, so to speak. But if they accidentally perforate the wall of the follicle, think of it as like a glass vase. If they accidentally shatter the stem of the vase, well, you can have a lot of inflammation in the surrounding skin. That's what can lead to hyperpigmentation or hypopigmentation, change in your skin color. Like laser hair removal, you also have to be careful if you're someone who gets cold sores because it can trigger a cold sore outbreak. Those are some of the more serious adverse risks. All right, let's talk about pros and cons. The pros of electrolysis are that it can be safely done in all skin types, and it can effectively target any type of hair. The cons are that it is a lot more painful in comparison to laser hair removal. Both can be uncomfortable, but electrolysis is typically more painful. Now, everyone's pain threshold is, individualized. So could be way too unbearable for one person, but no big deal for another person. And it also is going to depend on where you are targeting, where you're having the treatment done. Certain areas of the body are a lot more sensitive to pain than others. A big con with electrolysis is simply it is very time intensive. So you have to think practically. Are we talking about your entire back here that you want electrolysis on? In that case, I'd say realistically, you're probably going to be better served with laser hair removal. Up front, it might seem as though electrolysis is less expensive than laser hair removal, but you have to remember, you're going to need more sessions of electrolysis in comparison to laser hair removal. So you have to factor that in. It might end up being more expensive in the long run. The other con of electrolysis is that it takes a lot longer for you to start appreciating the reduction in hair. Laser hair removal, pros and cons. The pros are, well, you see results faster and in fewer treatments overall. The pain of laser hair removal, again, it kind of depends on where you're having it done. As it goes over a bone, that tends to be more uncomfortable. It's kind of like having a rubber band snap on you. The cons with laser hair removal are that it's probably not going to be super effective for the little peach fuzz hairs. They're coming out with new lasers all of the time. So we now have more sophisticated lasers that are appropriate for people with deeper skin tones when performed, of course, by someone with skill and expertise in doing so and knows the right settings to safely treat patients with deeper skin tones. All right, y'all, so that's how they differ. I hope this video was helpful to you and was informative in terms of how the two differ. Now, at the beginning of the video, I alluded to more common ways that people remove hair at home: waxing, depilatory creams, etc. On the end slate is going to be my video on how to remove unwanted hair. You need to watch that if this topic of hair removal is of interest to you, because I go into more detail about things like at-home laser hair removal. Is that a thing? I go into detail about depilatory creams, their risks and benefits, so watch that one next. But if you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and as always, don't forget, sunscreen and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye.